Main Street Media, Utah. This is Talk with John. Looking forward to being with you here for roughly the next 2 hours. Uh, I'm going to be introducing my guest here momentarily, but first I want to mention you are watching Talk with John here on Main Street Media, KMMU. You can go to Rumble, YouTube, and our Twitter pages and see us live and interact with us, and then obviously go back when it's convenient for you to go back as well. I want to say thank you to Dwayne, who is our producer and here today. He can take your calls if you'd like. You're welcome to call in, and I look forward to being with you for the remainder of the next 2 hours. So, before we go any further, I do want to mention my show prayer and show mantra. Now, folks, as I've admitted before and will admit again, I am a sinner. So this is the prayer of my heart when it comes to doing my show. No need to bow your head or close your eyes. It's just the prayer of my heart, like I said. I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra. Where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. All right. So, looking forward to now speaking with my guest for the next 2 hours. We're lucky to have him, folks. Michael Letts of Invest USA. Thank you for joining me, brother. Appreciate you being here today. Now,
always a privilege, John. Thank you.
As way of introduction, folks, for those of you that are not used to hearing Michael Letts. He is the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA. It's a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities provide thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces through educational, public relations, sponsorship, and fundraising programs. He also has over 30 years of law enforcement experience under his belt, hence his pro-police stance for his brothers and sisters in blue. So, those that are interested in learning more about him, please visit his official site, investusa.org. That's INVEST Michael, thank you so much for being here today, brother. It's a good day.
It's a great day, and it's going to be a great 4 years. It's already coming.
Okay, that's where we may part ways already. I am super concerned that they are doing everything they can to tank the economy and take out Donald Trump artificially. I'm not even sure that there is not another assassination attempt in the wings. Let me be clear. To the CIA, to the FBI, to all of law enforcement, go back and watch hundreds of hours, maybe not thousands, but definitely hundreds of hours. I have no desire to see Donald Trump be taken out or anyone else. I am concerned that you, government people and bad actors, are looking to take him out. So that's my concern. So, Michael, please assuage
me. Your concerns are very valid. But here is the difference. We're very well aware of it. And quite frankly, we are positioning ourselves to counteract that and to foil those attempts. We have been successful so far. And quite frankly, I feel very comfortable we're going to continue to be successful. The worst thing you can do when you have a plan up your sleeves for somebody else to know what you're fixing to do and to circumvent it or expose it before it happens. And that's where we're at right now. We've learned a page out of the Democratic playbook. Quite frankly, we're being very aggressive. You remember in the past, the first administration, the first term, Trump just got in and kind of said, well, I've been elected president. Now everybody's going to rally behind me to help the country move forward. And what happened was he got rhinos and people that tried to get his confidence and rally behind him. Yep, and try to quote unquote rally behind him to keep going what they were benefiting from. Well, that was the corruption. So, by the time all that got figured out, he got slammed basically every day. We're smarter this time. We know exactly what to look for. We know the intel. We've got feelers out. We've got people in various positions unknown to anyone else who are feeding us intel and data. And quite frankly, we feel extremely good about where we're headed. And we think very comfortably that we're going to be able to make some substantial change. If I tell people this, it's up to you, because one president, I don't care if he's Donald Trump or George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, you name it, one president cannot control and make the change in the country unless the entire country's behind him. When I say the entire country, obviously we're not talking about 100%, we're talking about 70, 80%, which is what the numbers showed when we elected him. But we can't just say, okay, we elected you, now we're going back to our work and here's the keys, good luck, let me know when you're finished. We have to all pitch in and work this together and stand firmly to make sure that we bring change once and for all. That change is going to be painful. Change is going to be very uh, difficult in terms of it's going to be highly fought against, but quite frankly, it's a necessary change. And I think you identified it the best, John. Change is not just going to be coming, the fight's coming from the Democrats, but the fight's going to come from even within our own party. Basically, let me just put it here in blood. Those who are corrupt, whether Democrat or Republican, makes no difference, will fight tooth and nail because this is their livelihood. And those who are not corrupt and who want to see the betterment of this country will rally behind the president to get this done.
Okay, so I have not read the reports myself, but even Vladimir Zelensky has come out and said only somewhere in the neighborhood of about less than 50% of the money has gotten here to us, and I didn't steal any of the money, is what he said.
Well, here's what you've got. It's actually 58% of the money is missing. 42% has arrived. Now, that's their figures. Our figures show it's even much worse. And quite frankly, so I think we can agree with Zelensky that at least 60 to 70% never arrived. Out of the other 20 to 30% that's there, uh, members within Zelensky's own government took probably another 10 to 20% of that. So roughly what our numbers are showing is about 10% of what we sent over there actually went to the purpose for which it was supposedly intended. Now, what's the majority of that? You're talking about 60+% that never got to Ukraine, that stayed in the US. So who did it go to? Well, guess what? We have oversight committees now that are asking and investigating those questions. Why do you think there are Republicans who are concerned about final confirmation of Tulsi, Cash, and others? Because they know that we know where it's at and we're going to expose it, and that will destroy their careers.
I wonder how much of that money has gone to people really high level positions or that have held high level positions in the Senate, like the highest level in the Senate that's
Yes.
Republican.
Mitch is one of them.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of my own senators.
Who's Chuck?
Yeah, who's Chuck? Yeah,
Chuck Schumer. Yeah, of course.
Who's Chucky Schumer? that when he takes a picture of him grilling hamburgers, doesn't even know how to grill a hamburger. Puts
exactly
puts
right.
the cheese right on the hamburger as it's pink, just being put on. That guy's never grilled a hamburger in his life.
No, he wouldn't. I'm surprised he didn't burn himself.
Yeah. And a senator from right here from the state of Utah, and I'm not talking about Mike Lee.
Nope.
Let me be clear. I guess it's now former senator that is no longer Mike Lee. And I have questions about the junior senator from the state of Utah. Hopefully he was wise enough to not take that money, but he was number 4 at 1 year. He was number 4. I think it was, okay, top 10. And if I remember correctly, it was number 4 in the most amount of money that he got from the stock market. He beat Nancy Pelosi.
And that's just one level source of revenue is insider trading on the stock market. All the forward aid, USAID, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But USAID is nothing but a money laundering operation to those who fund it. It's been put in the side the State Department It's been funded by members on both sides. And quite frankly, the amount of money that is used to kick back to them is disgusting. Let me just let you know a little bit of insider information here that your listeners will
Well, let's get
probably
into USA.
appreciate.
Let's just go right into it. So please continue on.
So here is what is not public, but it will be. We have sent a directive to all members of Congress, federal employees, etc., that, contrary to popular belief, as our investigations unfold, should we find money that was missing, that somehow found its way back into their accounts or accounts associated with them, we will be taking every full effort to reclaim those funds and to bring them back into the treasury. So we're going to bankrupt them.
Hmm.
We're not just gonna pop you and say, John, you shouldn't have taken the money. Now resign and then don't go do anything anymore. We're gonna say, John, you shouldn't have taken the money. Where is it? You better start paying it back because we're coming after it. It's not your money.
How
That
can
has
that?
them scared to death. Now you raise a good question. Can you actually get that accomplished? Well, let me tell you this, John. The Democrats had no problem with saying all kind of things over the last 4 years that they didn't know what they could or couldn't do. So we're taking a page out of their playbook. We're just going to say what's the right thing. We're going to figure out a way to do it, whether it can be done or not. We're going to find a way.
Okay. What percentage of Congress on the Democrat side do you think did that?
I would say you're in the high 90s.
And what percentage of the congressional men, and when I say Congress, I mean both houses,
Right.
what percentage do you think of the Republicans?
At least 60 to 70, possibly even higher.
Wow. Wow. So if you have questions about your senator or your congressman or another senator or congressman, more likely you are going to be right saying they're crooked than not.
Correct. And you know what's sad about it is the fact that they take it with such impunity. And it's just the way the system works. And they will look at you and say, oh, well, that's just the way business. We're just conducting business. Maybe that's the way we have boiled down to doing business over the last few decades, but it's still wrong. It's ethically wrong. It's morally wrong. And we're going to break it and we're going to stop it. You're stealing from the American taxpayers.
When I look at AOC and how vehement she is against everything, I wonder if she's involved.
you well, let's answer that question. She's serving her second term now in Congress, and she went from a barmaid, probably made 20,000, 30,000 a year. She's worth 29 million now.
She's worth 29 million.
That's with an M. Yes, sir. $29 million in 4 years.
Holy cow. Well, another one that has been mentioned as being on these boards and receiving very big paychecks that U.S. aid gives money to is Lindsey Graham.
Yes, sir. My senator. Lindsay's listed one of the top from money received from Ukraine. And that's just the beginning. You see, I mean, Ukraine is one small fraction of where all the money's going from. We send money to Ghana, to South Africa. I mean, we're not talking about sending them $100 bill because they don't have a tank of gas. Billions of dollars. Why in the world are we supporting everyone else's economy but ours?
Why are we giving millions of dollars for Gazans to have condoms?
Well, this is what's interesting. Let's add insult to injury on that one. There's a reason behind that. They use those in explosive devices. So we are helping to fund terrorist activities. We are helping to fund the destruction and the injuring of innocent civilians.
Okay,
Try that on for size.
so when I first heard that, I thought, well, you know, I must admit the 13-year-old, 14-year-old came out, 18-year-old came out in me. That was the first reaction. Then the second reaction was, well, I know what special forces use condoms on their literal rifles for. It's to
Correct.
keep the gunk out as they're going. They put condoms on their rifles to keep the gunk out of the barrels.
That is correct, but
So
they're very
that was the
effective when it comes to IEDs.
and then the other. So would you? I know there's some people that are going, "Oh, come on, Michael, you're full of it." Some of my Democrat friends I heard chirping in my ear. So how would they? You're not. We're not
Well,
going to give total. Go ahead.
let me chirp back to him. If you've been in a firefight, you wouldn't be raising the question. If you've never been in a firefight, you have no right to ask because, quite frankly, yes, they are using explosive devices consistently. Uh, they've been used since the beginning of time almost. We use them in World War II. We use them all over the place. They make great ability to hold and maintain explosive powder, etc., and great ability to put a fuse in it as well.
Keeps liquid out. Does a pretty good
Yep.
job of keeping liquid out. So yeah. All right. What is so? What are so far? What have you seen coming out of USA that you go, wow, this is beyond insane?
Well, we've spent 3.2 billion, not million, billion, propping up the government in South Africa, apartheid. Now you say, aren't we supposed to do that? Let's be very blunt. This is something that your listeners don't know. When we supported, when I say we, it was the CIA and the administration at that time supported the overthrow of the government in South Africa and to establish an apartheid government. We figured, hey, we are doing social justice. We are making sure that there is equity in the representation of the people of South Africa. Aren't you impressed? Now let's look at just last week what we have seen. There is a highway in South Africa lined by thousands of white crosses. Each white cross represents a white farm landowner who has been murdered and property taken by the government. Thousands. And we're paying for that. Explain to me what the benefit of that is to the American people.
Bottom line is, it doesn't matter whether it's someone who's white, black, purple, yellow, polka dot people eater. Bottom line is, what are we doing giving money? Why? And we've said this before. Why are we just sending billions and trillions of dollars over the years outside the United States to countries that hate our guts?
No question. We do the same thing in Ghana. I mean, look at here. You want to know what really frustrating? We spending $400,000. You say, oh, that's not very much. For one thing, to put on a transgender choir in England.
Yes.
Why? Why? First of all, we're paying $400,000 to get a bunch of transgenders to come up and sing. And second of all, we're doing it in England. It doesn't even benefit the American people. Not that the American people would be benefited anyway. But why in the world would we spend $400,000? See, here's the problem. USAID has become a slush fund. It has become a fund that is used to reward people who give the money to the liberal democratic causes. And it's time to just eliminate it.
So I think that's one of the reasons why the Democrats have been so successful over the years.
Oh, there's
They're
no question.
they go, hey, and this is one of the differences between the Republicans and the Democrats. Republicans, we are not supposed to have just a bunch of money funneling into our pet causes, right? We're supposed to
Correct.
be, especially the ones that claim they're fiscally conservative. But the Democrats, so you can't go to every Republican and say, well, let me give you millions of dollars for some pet project, right? It'll make them look bad. But every Democrat, man, if you're not towing the line, Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer over the years, and now Jeff Humphreys is able to go to them and say, "Hey, how about we make sure we get millions of dollars to your pet? Your best friend that's the leader of that board. Excuse me, it's Jakeem Jeffries. I got it
Yep.
wrong.
Jakeem.
Hakeem Jeffries. They go to AOC. She's not going the way they want her on this one. Hey, how about we put in this bill? We're going to give $1 million to your best friend's 501c3. And as you know, plenty of that money gets dumped back into their campaign,
Oh, there's no
which
question.
eventually gets to them, right?
Well, they get so bold now. I mean, that was the old days, John. Now they're so bold. Now they serve on those boards and take a salary.
Right,
So
right.
the money actually goes into their pocket, not just into their campaign. They get a double hit.
Man, maybe I need to become a Democrat in one of those areas.
Well, you missed the boat because if you should have done it years ago, you'd be a $100 million or better person by now.
Well, so USAID, Elon Musk, I think he's doing some really good work over at Doge. What are your thoughts
Well,
there?
and let's talk about we'll tie in USA and how this whole situation came about. Well, you have President Trump who said, "Look, I need to get a handle on how we can start stopping wasteful spending. You can't stop it till you know what's being done. So I'm going to create the Dodge Commission, and I'm going to have outside people, Elon Musk being one." You said, "Why would you pick Elon?" Well, he's the only one that's got the money to have the time to be able to dedicate to research. Okay, and it's not just him sitting up
And he's
with a cup of
so one
coffee.
thing that I want to say about Elon Musk, he's using his own people and paying them out of
Correct.
his pocket to be there,
Correct.
not the government's pocket, his pocket to be there.
So here's where it started, and Elon says, "Okay, send me over a list of what we're funding," and the answer was no. And then it's okay, we'll send you a redacted list, where they put 10 things on one line item, so you have no idea what's actually being spent. So they got smart. Yeah, the new Secretary of the Treasury was directed by Trump, and he agreed wholeheartedly. We'll let you into our computer system that shows every check being written, and you will know where every dollar is going. And that's where he's following the leads, and it has got the Democrats so upset because you can't deny it. I've got a check right here for $20 billion to Gaza, and here's what it says it's for. Is your system wrong, or is this what you spent it on? And he's going down the list. He's only started, and he's already saved over $2-3 billion so far out of the budget, and we've only just begun.
Well, I'm looking forward to him making a bunch of headway. All right. Well, we're about half an hour into the show, and we've only hit USAID.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
All right. So something that I do want to get to, I want to hit that's not necessarily, I would say, exactly in your realm, but I do want to hit the Black Hawk and the RJ. I believe it was a Bombardier RJ. I don't want to say it's an RJ7 Bombardier 700. So my best friend is a former airline pilot,
Right.
and he actually flew the 200. And so he said, he goes, John, one of the things about that RJ is it has a very high level. So when it comes in, right, it's got a very high pitched nose, and he goes, you can barely see the runway. So
Correct.
he goes, I don't think they saw that the Black Hawk. The other thing is the Black Hawk helicopter told the tower, the tower asked, do you have the RJ in visual? And they answered back quickly, yes.
Correct.
Obviously, they didn't. And so,
Here's what's interesting. Let's talk about this whole issue. First of all, let's talk about the mainframe. We know that under the Biden administration, their primary objective was DEI. And so they hired controllers based on DEI, not based on merit. Second of all, they're way understaffed. And so on this particular evening, you have one controller doing two jobs,
right.
both fixed wing and helicopter. Now, once you
And
establish
normally
that
those are
premise,
separated, folks. Normally those are
they're
separated.
separated, correct. And once you establish that fact, the third discrepancy that you have is you have the controllers signaling, given the indication that the Black Hawk is at 200 feet. It was actually at 341. So, there was a huge difference there, and it would have avoided the collision even by getting that close had they been accurate. The fourth thing that you've got is you have the pilot, the female, the supposed female pilot, who they scrubbed all of her social media because he was in the process of becoming a woman from a man. And here is what's interesting is that she did
The one
not
that had
fly
the one that had 500 hours of flight time.
400 hours.
Okay.
Yes, she did not. Those 400 hours were old. She took the previous 2 years and was assigned as a White House as a military liaison to the White House to Joe Biden.
Okay. So that's something that I want to bring up real quickly. I know a little bit about flying. Now, I'm not a pilot. I'm not a commercial pilot. But when someone takes that long, so when I heard that that individual was at the Biden White House, I was like, for how long? And it sounds like they just got out of the Biden White
That
House.
is correct.
What in the world are they doing up in an aircraft at night? Any aircraft, let alone and people. There is a huge difference between flying fixed wing aircraft and flying a helicopter. A helicopter is much more complex, takes much more time. Even less than 500 hours in a fixed wing aircraft, that's not a ton of hours. To be
No, it's
flying
not.
over, being flying into Reagan Airport, that's a concern right there. But that individual up on so it was a check ride. We understand it was a check ride. There is no way that individual with such little hours, just recently back on the job, should be flying a fixed wing aircraft or be flying a roto wing aircraft at night. Shouldn't have happened. I think we will see. I think that there is going to be tons of information that will come out. Now, I had not heard that it was a male to female
That's
transition
because that's been
individual.
silenced.
I thought it was the other way around.
No, it's been
Okay.
silenced. You know, it was odd that they wouldn't release the name of that particular pilot at the request of privacy by the family. When it was released, what happened is you went back once the name was released and looked at all the social media accounts, and they'd all been scrubbed. There was a reason why it had nothing to do with privacy. It was a matter of them making sure they're getting their story straight. You know, the other thing, if you've ever been on a Black Hawk, uh, you always have four people that pilot that thing, not three. And when I say pilot, you have your two pilots, but you always have four personnel. So there are a lot of questions. Now you say, how come we're not getting forthcoming answers immediately? Now you're talking about liability. Who's at fault? And who's going to get blamed? And who's going to pay the bill? And quite frankly, everybody is CYA at the moment.
Well, this is my take, and almost from the very beginning, but definitely by Friday morning after I talked with my friend, he was like, "So, an aircraft to be told they needed, so they were supposed to go on run. I think it was runway one. They were switched over. That's a those pilots were doing everything they were supposed to and had no chance. Had no
Yeah,
chance.
they were in the flight the lane. They were in the flight lane. I mean,
Right.
they didn't deviate. They didn't do anything wrong.
But between air traffic control and the military, I think that's where we will find that there are huge issues. And I think there are about to be, because of this incident, this is the first crash we've had of two aircraft over United States airspace since I believe the mid 80s.
That's correct.
That is a long time to not have a mid-air air crash. Well, that's 40 years almost.
And I think what you're going to find, John, is DEI played a role on both sides, air traffic control and in the military.
Right, right. And if there's two groups of people that we have to have the absolute best talented people, it's pilots and air traffic control. They
Exactly.
have to be, um, because both of those jobs, yeah, 90 air traffic control, those guys are under pressure all the time.
Correct. I
Pilots,
think what's
for about 10% of the takeoff and landing and
right.
checking out that aircraft, those guys are under a lot of pressure.
I think what was interesting in this situation is a training mission, obviously, but it's a doomsday training mission, i.e., continuity of government. So what the purpose of the mission was that if there had been an attack on the White House, they were supposed to be moving the key officials, president, vice president, etc. They would have hated for that to be real. They wouldn't have survived, would they?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Um, any other thoughts on the midair collision? That
Well, yeah, I'll leave this one final thought. The mainstream media is going after President Trump. How in the world would you be so insensitive to automatically say it's DEI when there's been tragedy and people have died? Because we need to get to the root cause so that it never happens again. And DEI has caused more problems than we have time on this show to talk about. And it's time to call it for what it is and bury it and be done with it.
okay? So I actually want to mention something along those lines. So this happened several times back in the first administration of Donald Trump. He'd come out and make statements that people thought were pretty much off the cuff. The bottom line is, soon as something like this happens, he's got people that are coming to meet with him. Mr. President, this has happened. This is what we know. This is what we think is going on. He's already got a huge data dump of information.
Correct.
Way before, I mean, if it happens in another country, the CIA, NSA, whatever other three-letter agency group in the military are giving him information, and he's just going out and saying what he is gathering from his intel. That's one thing that I like about Donald Trump is he gives it to you straight from the very beginning, pretty much on a regular basis.
It's interesting. I don't want to digress, but you mentioned the CIA, of course, USAID. That was one of the key funding aspects for the CIA. They take that money and make determination as to what regimes to prop up, to take down, and to alter or to change. And quite frankly, I think the American people need to ask the question: why are we involved in other administrations to what they do or don't do? It's none of our business. We need to be the superpower that we are. You mess with us, you mess with your very own life. Outside of that, you decide how you want to govern your own self. It doesn't concern us.
So, kind of another foreign affairs domestic issue I want to cover is your thoughts with the President Trump declaring tariffs on. Now, he said he was going to declare tariffs in March or April. And then, like a couple days later, boom, he says, I'm going to declare them now. Kind of interesting how the Black Rocks of the world and so forth did a bunch of short options on the stock market for March.
Correct. He ruined that for him, didn't he?
Well, let's hope that they really pay a significant price for those put options. Okay, folks, real quickly to the audience, you are watching KMMU.org, KMMU.org, Main Street Media, Utah. You can see us live here on the Twitter channel, YouTube channel, and Rumble channels. Also, we happen to have our producer today. So if you want to call in and ask Michael Letts any questions, feel free to do so. The number is 385 899 2134. That's 385 899 2134. So I want to get your thoughts on President Trump talking about and the tariffs. 25% tariff on Canada, 25% tariff on Mexico, and 10% on the on China. And every single one of those groups said, "Oh, we're not doing anything. We're digging in. We're just going to put as many tariffs on you." Yeah, my lonely call screener says it's pretty lonely right here. I could use someone to call and get on board, so you can come online with. So yeah, please do something for Dwayne. So, what are your thoughts? Especially, it was kind of funny how Mexico she was very defiant, a very defiant woman, and so was Trudeau.
Correct.
They've been singing different tune recently, and even China's possibly singing a little bit of a different tune. What are your thoughts there?
Well, you've got a number of different aspects you have to look at here. First of all, we're talking about securing our border. And if you're not willing to cooperate with us, then you have actually taken a role against us. So if you're going to be against us, then why are we providing you two things? Why are we not charging you tariffs? And why are you giving you economic aid? And that's why he used those tools. But that's just part of the equation because they immediately capitulated to that. Don't put tariffs on. Mexico said they'll send 10,000 troops. Trudeau said he would bring in 1.3 billion and allocate it towards border security. But the second thing you need to realize is tariffs isn't new. It has been an unfair trade balance for decades. America has always caught it on the chin. We have been most generous. We've always been the one to get the short end of the stick. And we're always the one that's abused. And so what Donald Trump is saying is why? Why should we allow that to happen? If you want to have tariffs against us, then we're going to pose them against you. And we're going to balance the trade. And that's where we're at today. That's why, yes, we paused on the tariffs because of the fact that you conceded to border security, which was our first priority. But in 30 days, it's not just going to be about border security. You better figure out how you're going to balance the trade. Remove the tariffs that you're charging us, or determine that we're going to impose the same tariffs on you and be even. And it will destroy their economies. They can't afford that. But they've been living off. That's just the second part. Remember, the third part is humanitarian or foreign aid. Why do we give Canada foreign aid? Why do we give Mexico
Beats
so much
me.
foreign aid? We do. And here's what I was just on a show
We
right
already
before this one.
we supplement their military. We
Yeah,
supplement their military big time.
no question. That's just one aspect. I was just on a show a few minutes earlier before I got on with yours. And the question when we were talking about law enforcement, how come, the officers don't have all the vests that they need? I said, because we're sending the money all across the world. We're not keeping any of it for ourselves. We support Mexico, Canada, Ukraine. I mean, you can probably list every country in the world gets foreign aid from us, but yet we can't afford to take care of our own. That's what Donald Trump said is enough. We're stopping that. America first. We will take care of our people because we're paying the taxes, folks. It's our money. This is what I want your listeners to understand. It is your money. It's not the government's money. It's yours. Do you want them wasting and stealing it from you? I don't think so.
Okay, one of the moves that I am the most I would toot his horn the most over is him cutting off of aid, or excuse me, not cutting off aid, but getting the Panama Canal back control. That looks like we maybe, hopefully. I mean, I loved his message. We're going to go take it back. We paid for it. We built it. Part of the agreement is that you weren't going to give it to other people. China controls basically the both sides of the Panama
That's correct.
Canal. And then on top of that, they have cameras all throughout the canal. They know exactly what's going on.
That's correct.
You don't think that they can't all of a sudden, you know,
Sabotage it.
United States gets in a war, they can close down those locks and it'll take months, if not over a year, to get those locks up back and working. And that's 27 more days to the transit from the Pacific to the
That's
Atlantic,
correct.
or the Atlantic to the Pacific.
And of course, where do we stand on that now? Well, of course, Panama has canceled its contracts with China and has said that they still want to maintain it and they will offer free passage of U.S. warships through the Panama Canal. The problem is this: they broke the initial agreement, and as you said, by allowing an adversary to come in and have control for any period of time, we don't know what kind of sabotage work that they have done. So I know the president is still contemplating this, but my recommendation is that we proceed as originally stated. We will own the Panama Canal. Over 38,000 American lives were lost in the construction of that canal, and we can't even calculate the number of money in today's terms as to how much we spent for it. And to just turn it over and say we're going to give it to you because we're good people, and you can charge us rent or lease for us to be able to go through was a very stupid, foolish move.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Amen, brother. Preach, preach. As it may be. I mean, really, I think Carter is going to go down as the second worst president in the history of the United
I agree.
States. But Joe Biden will definitely go down as probably the most corrupt.
You've only seen the beginning of
God,
it. Yeah, we could talk for the next 3 hours on all the corruption that we have uncovered in the last 9 days, and we're just
okay.
getting started.
Speaking of his corruption, one thing you've heard me constantly say is I don't know who to be more angry with, the Democrats or the Republicans. And this is one of those reasons why. I want your thoughts on this. Michael Johnson was in with Biden. As he tells the story, and I can't remember if this story came out
Speaker, yes,
right after the nomination or if it was just before the nominate or not nomination before either it was right after the inauguration or right before the
right.
inauguration. Mike Johnson tells the story, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to try to lay out the story and I want your thoughts on it. Michael Johnson, the Speaker of the House,
Hmm.
right, had been asking for a meeting with Joe Biden at the White House for months. Finally, he was granted that meeting. And I can't remember what Joe Biden asked him. He asked him something, I can't remember what it is. And he goes, well, Mr. President, before we go down that road and I talk to you about that, I've got a question for
Correct.
you. And he goes, my constituents in Louisiana, one of the number one things they make their money off of is the exportation of liquefied natural
Correct.
gas. And he goes, I can't remember the exact time frame, but several months ago, I want to say maybe it was even a year and a half ago, you put a policy together that ended the exporting the liquefied natural gas, and it's hurting my constituents. And President Biden was like, "No." He was like, "What are you? I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "I didn't do that." And he goes, "Mr. President, I promise you, I know I'm not lying to you." And so one of the things that was happening, I can't remember where it was in the process, but Biden said, "Hey, me and the speaker are going to talk together. I want the rest of you out." And he goes, everybody's face went basically ghost white. "No, Mr. President, you need us here. You need us to talk about it." And so finally, Joe Biden all of a sudden kind of was like a little bit of that memory came on. And he said, "No," he goes, "I signed a bill for the exploration of what would
Right.
happen if we were to do that." He goes, "That's what I signed." And he goes, "Mr. President," he goes, we can call in one of your aides and we can actually get that bill." And he said, this is what Mike Johnson said. And so there's a part of me that goes, I don't know how much I should believe or trust Michael Johnson. He said that the look on Joe Biden's face, he goes, he wasn't lying. He was telling the truth. He really didn't know. I've claimed this. I think you've claimed this. I've said this many times. I don't think Joe Biden knows 95% of what he was doing.
Well, we're going.
They would put something in front of him. They would say, "Sign this, Mr. President." If he ever asked, they had some sort of pitch, and he'd just sign it. I don't think he really knew. So this is what I'm upset with Michael Johnson about, and so I want you to talk to about it, to all these different points. This is one of the things that I'm really ticked off about Mike Johnson. Why did you not say anything?
I agree.
There's only one explanation that I can somewhat buy why he kept his mouth shut and didn't say anything. And even that, it's a political reason. But even that, I've got an issue. So, your thoughts, Michael?
Well, I think that's accurate, and quite frankly, I think it wasn't just Mike. I think a lot of people had that question, and here's where it initially comes down to. This is what poses a significant problem for the Biden administration in terms of its legacy, because the House Oversight Committee is now investigating this. And when Jim Cromer decides he's going to sink his teeth in something, he does. And here's what they're looking at. They want to know exactly who was calling the shots at the White House, because you remember, here's the president, Joe Biden, his worst enemy. He has stated, and the FBI concurred, they couldn't move forward for an indictment because they didn't think he was mentally capable of providing his own
Right.
defense. So he's already cooked his own goose. So here's the question: if he wasn't making the determinations, then who was? And if somebody else was making the determinations, then what's the constitutionality of that? This could be a much bigger issue than anybody ever realizes. You've got Supreme Court nominee he put on the Supreme Court. You've got so many policies that instigated that, quite frankly, he may not have signed himself. In fact, we're beginning to look now that some of those signatures may not have been Joe Biden's. So, quite frankly, there are some real constitutional matters that have to be weighed here. If somebody else was running the show unelected, and he had a conspirator group, shall we say, that was dictating the shots, and just either having him sign it on a good day, signing it for him on a bad, there's some real issues as to everything that was accomplished during that administration. And what are we going to do about it? It becomes the same principle. And quite frankly, I can tell you where the president is at, President Trump. He's determined that we're going to get to the truth, because it's the same principle with the election integrity. You say, I won't forget about that because the election's over now in 2020. Let's move forward. Yes, that is true. The election is over, but there's still people still have to be held accountable for their actions. And where that leads us to, what does that mean? There wasn't everything he did was illegal. How do you sort through all that? I don't know, and I don't think any of us know. But I think it's becoming to the American people to know the truth and to know the facts, and we'll sort through it together.
So the Main Street media I knew was in his pocket all along.
Correct.
When I remember watching, can't remember if it was CNN or MSNBC right after the first debate. There were people like, I can't believe this. It was and literally the same guys were saying just within the week or two before, oh, I've been with President Biden. He's never been sharper. He's never been
They
smarter.
kept trying to convince
And
us
then
of
they're
that.
going, I can't believe this happened. I'm like, what? Either you're lying then or you're lying now or you're lying both of the
Lying
times.
both the times.
Bottom line is, I'm like, bottom line is, I've seen this as I've shared with you, and you've seen it. I have a grandmother and a mother-in-law that were experiencing dementia back in the back when Joe Biden was running for the presidency back in 2019 and 2020. I was like, and I had a guest on that was like, how dare you even say he's got dementia? You have no right to say that, and you have no qualifications. I'm like, I'm a human being. I've been around people that have dementia, starting on dementia, and he's got it worse than both of those individuals do. And my grandma was in, late 80s, early 90s.
Well, you have eyes. You had every right to express what you saw, and quite frankly, he should have been able to diffuse that if it wasn't true. But you notice he never took the opportunity to have a medical checkup or to release any information that would just be contrary to what your suspicion was.
And all his doctors ever do would say he was perfectly capable of being, and that's another thing. Man, the doctors that signed off and told the American public that he was fine, that there were no issues with the health, they need to lose their medical licenses. And they, I think there's people that should face legal action, maybe not treason, but it's like right underneath treason, but legal action, there's tons of them. And then, so your thoughts on that?
That leads us to that and to another point, talking about Gitmo. Why do you think we're opening up Gitmo? Is it because we're looking for 30,000 places to place illegal immigrants? Absolutely not.
That's what I've been told. That's what I understood.
No, not even close. To be fair, there may be a select group of highly dangerous illegal immigrants that we don't want to send back to their country of origin, because we're concerned that they will not be able to hold them and they'll come back and try to get back into the United States again. But what is Gitmo? It's a military installation. Is held for military tribunals. Military tribunals are for those who have violated national security and have abused the position of office. And so, quite frankly, if we're talking about some of these criminals or illegal immigrants, they'll be tried from a national security standpoint. And you remember, they're not going to be kept for 30 years, on tennis courts and having their, TV and cushy meals. They'll be executed. So, quite frankly, that is where we have Gitmo, and that is why it's being opened up. Because, quite frankly, you're fixing to see accountability unlike anything you've ever seen in history before. We have agency after agency after agency, and mainstream media who have lied and distorted and done everything in their power to circumvent the American Constitution. And by doing that, they're going to be held accountable for it. And quite frankly, how do we hold people accountable? There's varying degrees with what you talked about with the mainstream media. You are granted a license. The FCC grants you a license, ABC News, MSNBC, CNN, etc. That license is granted for you to be honest and transmit news to the American people, not your personal opinions. And if you violated that, there needs to be accountability and consequences. Those licenses need to be revoked and given to somebody else that can do the job adequately. The same thing when it comes down to federal employees. You know, right now there's a big uproar. FBI is looking at the request was made. How many people in the FBI were involved in J6? Because they've already ordered the termination of some of the key top leaders. The response has come back as there's over to 5,000 to 6,000 FBI agents that were involved. And now they're complaining they want Congress to intervene to make sure they can't be terminated. But quite frankly, they're going to be held accountable for their actions. FEMA, over 3,000, we have just discovered. There were over 3,000 people we're looking at in FEMA. Why are we looking at them? There are bunkers of supplies and material that were never distributed, that were used to benefit members within inside the organization. We're talking about FEMA camps that were improperly used. We're talking about some of those that were used for child sex trafficking. You will be held accountable. Folks, this is just getting started. What I just mentioned to you about USAID using those funds through the CIA to destabilize governments, all this is going to be coming out, and we're going to need more than 30,000 beds to hold people during military tribunals for acts of high and aggravated nature and acts of treason against the United States of America.
Okay, Michael, real quickly before I ask you a follow-up question, folks, you are watching KMMU Main Street Media Utah, and I want to say thank you for joining me. So, Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to do kind of my top of the hour mention
Sure.
of the show and a little bit about us. So we're Main Street Media Utah. That's KMMU.org or MainStreetMediaUtah.org. You can go to our website and find links to past shows. So to all of our great guests, Talk with John is not the greatest of them all. That we've got fantastic. In fact, I might be at the bottom of them all. But I will tell you, I have the best guests. That's the bottom line.
Did you guys?
And on top of that, I will also say, I want to say thank you for being here. The phone number is 385-899-2134. That's 385-899-2134. Now, before we get going forward, I do want to do this. I want to give out the top of the hour. I want to give out my show prayer and my show mantra. Folks, as I mentioned before, John's a sinner. But when it comes to doing this show, I really try to align with the man upstairs. So the show prayer is, I hope my show is a gift back to my forefathers, the founding fathers, and may it be an acceptable token to our Father above. Then the show mantra. Where there is liberty, there is the Spirit of Christ. Where the Spirit of Christ is, there will be liberty. And the greater the Spirit of Christ, the greater liberty will be. Folks, the bottom line is Satan is the God of this world from what we're told, but the God of this land, the United States of America, as the founders put it, as in the Constitution of the United States in Article 7, the God of this land, the Lord of this land is Jesus Christ. And if we will follow him, folks, we have a chance to get it back. And I will tell you, I do think that there has been a little bit of turn towards Christ over the last 6 months to a year.
I agree.
Okay, I want to get back to Michael Johnson. My frustration with him and other Republican leaders, Michael Johnson, I can't be the only one that saw it.
Oh, yeah,
Why didn't you guys come out and say anything? The only reason, well, like I said, the only reason why I can think of that they didn't do it is political. But I'm like, why didn't you come out and say, hey, this man's lost his mind?
well,
And the great thing about if you come out and say this man's lost his mind is you get to say, and everybody surrounding him in the Democrat Party, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, his vice president, everybody's lying to you.
correct.
Michael Letts.
Well, I think everything rises and falls on leadership, quite frankly, John. And what you saw in the past is nobody wanted to be that first person to stand up and tell the truth. And they all kind of cowered away and let somebody else do it. Now, once you had somebody like Donald Trump that's beginning to say it, realizing it connects with the American people, now everybody wants to get on the bandwagon. But that shows you what kind of character people really have. And it shows you, unfortunately, that we have within our halls of Congress the vast majority of them who really, quite frankly, should never be there. They're not the kind of leaders that this country needs. This country needs decisive leadership. It needs people that are principled, valued, and know the difference between right and wrong, not on what is convenient. I understand talking about with Johnson that it's easier just to not say anything, but just because it's easier doesn't make it right. And it's time that we have people who will stand for principle and truth. Donald Trump is one of them. And quite frankly, let me put out a little plug because we still have confirmation appointees that have not been voted on yet. And we have Republicans vacillating back and forth. Can't even get your own party to do what they're supposed to do. But let me very quickly say to those that are vacillating, the only reason you would vacillate is because you have something to hide. You are either involved in some nefarious activity or you have a name on a list that you don't want exposed. Well, trust me, it's going to get exposed anyway. So you better make sure you have some principle and values, and let's do something for the country instead of doing something for yourself.
Okay. Michael, I'm going to push you on this.
Go ahead.
I want your statement on Michael on the Speaker of the House. What she
he's in the same boat.
Here's the reason why
he should have done that.
Why I could say. Here's the reason why I think if I was interviewing, I'd say, why didn't you bring it out? I think his excuse would be because we wanted to make sure that we got Donald Trump in, that we wanted, because if
I don't buy that.
If I would have brought it out sooner, and I want to say it was like 6 months to a year before the election that he had that meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long time before it. I'm like, why in the world did you not come out and tell the truth? The bottom line, and Michael, if you're not doing that, how can I trust anything else you say and anything else you stand behind?
You see, that's not an excuse to say, well, that's the right thing to do, and I'm going to do the right thing. I'm just not going to do it today. I'm going to do it later. Then you're doing the wrong thing. You're not doing the right thing, and that's why there's no excuse for that. And quite frankly, whether it's Mike or anybody else, they should have all been on the same wagon. It doesn't matter whether they're Republican or Democrats. They should have all spoke the truth, and that's the problem. What you're seeing now, we've talked about it on your show before, but let's remind the American public one more time. Here's what happens: you run for Congress. It costs money. You either have to get somebody to put that money up, which means you are now indebted, or you happen to win on a fluke, but you win, and then you realize, wow, this is a pretty nice lifestyle. A lot of benefits. I want to keep it. And so, how do you keep it? Well, you've got plenty of people that stand up and say, we'll take care of the money for you. We'll take care of your campaigns. We'll hire the best consultants, the best PR firms, etc. But when we call, you answer. And when we say vote yay or vote nay, that's how you vote. And that's what we have. We have a chamber full of people who have been bought. And that's time that we break that habit.
Well stated. Well stated. Let's get to some lists that are coming out. So, I can't remember if I've heard that President Trump is going to bring out the Epstein list. That is a list that the Diddy list, I think, needs to be brought forward as
let's
well.
take those two. What you have heard is Kash Patel saying that he is committed to make, and Pam Bondi have said that they are committed to making those lists public. I'm not so sure the president has specifically addressed that, but obviously it's getting addressed through his people. Which is why on those two, Cash and Pam, you notice they haven't been confirmed yet. They're scheduled to be, and we're still pushing to make sure. I believe we have the votes to get them through. But why do you think we've got such opposition, even among our own party?
Maybe there's a bunch of people on that Epstein list.
I think you should take the word maybe out. There are probably a bunch of people on that list
within our party,
on both
within the
sides.
Republican
Both
Party.
sides.
Now, if I remember correctly, you've said in the past you think there's more Democrats.
I agree, but still,
on that list.
there's there are members on both sides, and there's a lot more Democrats than there are Republicans. But the fact there are any Republicans is disgusting.
Then, what are your thoughts? So I texted you earlier. I said I want your thoughts on JFK, RFK, and MLK. And I texted you. Now you didn't answer, so I'm just telling people.
I'm glad to answer.
I've got these. I've got these thoughts, and I did say to him that I want to talk to him about it, but he hasn't talked to me about it. So I'm going to hear his response. But I asked this to you. Do you think that the full records with all of the information is going to come out? Because we know that
it was our own government.
Oswald was on the payroll at one point in time. I can't remember if it was the FBI or the CIA, but it was in the last data dump that we got. And so a thing that's interesting, Roger Stone has said this, and that Donald Trump, I can't remember on what news show, said, I should have released those records back in my first term, but I was talked out of doing it by, I believe it was Pompeo.
Correct.
Or was it Pompeo or Podesta?
No, it was Mike.
Remember.
It was Pompeo.
Mike Pompeo. I thought it was Mike. So I was talked out of doing it. And listen to him. I shouldn't have done it because it's just too much information that could hurt people. After 50 years can hurt someone?
We've had the.
Let me finish this.
Sure.
I hope I'm wrong, but here's what I think is going to happen. When the final records get, quote unquote, the final records are revealed, it's going to say nothing about the government. It was going to be, hey, you, just as we've been told all these years, it was a lone gunman and Jack Ruby just got angry and shot him afterwards.
Well, that's already been shot down.
I hope so.
Those JFK files have just been released. You're not getting reporting from mainstream media, but here's exactly what they show. They show it was an inside job. The fatal shot was shot by the Secret Service agent driving the vehicle. The pictures, we do have video actually showing it now in full view. And he used a weapon that was specifically designed by the CIA.
So Secret Service shot John Kennedy.
An operative with the Secret Service, yes.
An operative with the Secret Service shot John Kennedy with a CIA-invented weapon.
Correct.
Okay. I have not heard this anywhere. I haven't heard this not only in the mainstream. I haven't heard this. In fact, I can't even say that I saw this on the Gateway Pundit or anything like that.
We have all the video. And in fact, carried a step further. It was such a specially designed weapon by the CIA because it didn't have metal and all that kind of stuff in it, that the shell that was used was laced with sea poison toxin. And so that if for some reason it was not successful for an immediate death, it would poison the brain and kill him within an hour anyway. That's why his brain was transplanted before he was shipped back to DC.
Interesting.
All
Interesting.
that's there. I mean, so that's already come out. I haven't seen the MLK yet or RFK. I'm sure I will, but that pretty much answers the question. I'm not telling you that there's not something that may or may not be redacted, but right now it's all coming out.
So when did that come
Two
out?
days ago,
Because
about 2, 3
pardon me,
days ago,
2 or 3
2 or 3
days.
days. Hmm.
Interesting. Well, breaking news here, folks, that even Talk with John doesn't have the information, and that would be that would be awesome.
I mean,
I
it's
really
indisputable. That's what happened. Now, here's what is surprising: is you would think with that being released that America would be up in arms, but maybe it's because of the fact that nobody's reported it yet. I don't know.
well when that information comes out. I think it will start rolling out here pretty soon because my understanding is they were still waiting to release it. So, um,
So they have you're partially correct. They're waiting to release like RFK, MLK, but they have released JFK.
well, if they release the full information on JFK, then we're going to get it about RFK and MLK. So, what do you think is going to happen when that information comes out? Where's the level of the
Well,
trust? Are they going to be able
well,
to create the narrative? Hey, that was just a few bad actors, 50
no.
years ago.
You have to tie it on. You have to understand where we're headed as an administration. Uh, and I know that people are listening right now, but let me make sure that I reiterate the point. Our government has done some very, very nefarious things over the last 2 decades and has not been what would think it should be. And quite frankly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are going to be more revelations and I do share some concern. How much bad news can one person take? How much disheartening news of a country that you love when you see it's gone totally off the rails can a stomach hold? I don't know the answer to that question. But I will tell you this, it's bad. We are just now getting the tip of the iceberg. And what we will be revealing is not just JFK, but all that our intelligence agencies have done to circumvent, to uh, go after American citizens, which is unconstitutional, to meddle in foreign affairs where they never had authority, to set up organized crime syndicates to fund operations. It is you haven't seen anything yet, folks. This is like a novel that a really, really bad novel that you really don't want to read, but it's true.
Okay, so something that is, folks. If you want to know why John such Talk with John says he's a sinner, I am. I'll tell you one of my sins. I really enjoy looking at some of on X. I'll go through libs of TikTok and watch some of those videos. Watching the left absolutely losing their minds. There was a uh, on the left. One of the things they had on the libs of TikTok, I went through, and it was quote unquote a man. It was a woman that has transitioned to a man, breaking down and crying for like, I don't know, I think it was like 3 to 6 minutes. She was crying because Donald Trump was in and she's not been able to sleep. And I'm like, just so you know, a real man doesn't fall apart like that. So let me be clear. You're never going to be a man. A woman does. I've seen women do that. I've seen women lose it and not be able to pull themselves together over something like that. But I'm like, yeah, just so you know, give up being a man, even though you've got the hair treatments and you've got a little bit of a scraggly going on with the beard type look. Bottom line is, you're never going to be a man. Just go ahead and switch back. But I love the left melting down. But and I would have thought that there was some talk. We've heard Bill Maher, um, someone that I think we need to be really concerned about is Stephen A. Smith. He's a black sports commentary guy on ESPN. I think he's being propped up. to be to run for the presidency. There was a national poll. There's been a couple national polls, and he's received 2% of the vote to be that he should run for the nomination of the president. That people would vote for him, 2%. Here's why he's so bad. The man's a liar. Folks, you ought to go and see what Jason Whitlock has to say about Stephen A. Smith. He breaks it down really well. But Stephen A. Smith has come on Sean Hannity and a few conservative shows saying the left's lost their darn mind. And that's not exactly what he said. But the left has lost their mind. We need to get back to it. The American public said, no, we don't want you. We don't want you here. Here's the problem with Stephen A. Smith having this come to Jesus moment. If you're so smart, you should have known that from the beginning, and you should have never voted for
Correct.
Kamala Harris. You said you voted for Kamala Harris. Why in the world should we trust you? You should have voted third party, if anything. All right. So the DEI, and so there's still, in general, the Democrat Party is still with the DEI. The Democrat National Committee had their voting, their body voting recently.
Correct. To get the new leadership for the upcoming elections in 2028.
And even within those nominations, they were talking about we should have three of one sex, 3 of another, and then we should have 2 and 2.
Non-binary.
Non-binary. Yep. I'm like, you guys are still drinking that Kool-Aid. You're a bunch of morons.
No question.
So David Hogg is now the vice president, the kid that wants to take your firearms away. Yeah, let me tell you, that's not working out for the left. So I will agree with a political commentator, Ben Shapiro. To the left, don't give up. Dig in harder on the left. Go more into your DEI. Please do it, because we'll get even more people. We'll win the 2026 elections based on that idiot thought process. Your thoughts on that? Still sticking with the DEI, and your thoughts there?
Well, they're definitely sticking with DEI. They're sticking with every liberal policy that they've had. They don't know how to do anything different because they're in such a minority, but yet it's a very vocal minority, and they don't know how to break the chain. But here's what they're doing by re-emphasizing their points. Here's what the American people see. They see gangs of illegal immigrants in Southern California yesterday, blocking roads, throwing fits, taking over traffic. They see LAPD coming to do what their job is, and that's to restore order. Then they're seeing their Democratic mayor call them out, say, nope, stand down. And they're just realizing that, they haven't learned a thing. People are tired of that kind of behavior. They want it to end. And what they're doing is they're helping to facilitate it. They're opposing every initiative that we have to bring back common sense. I'm picking on California right now, but I can use this analogy anywhere in the country. The water, all the wildfires not having the water, it's because of their crazy climate change policies, where they diverted 100 million gallons of water a day and dumping it into the ocean. And of course, under federal law, navigable streams are federally controlled. And so the president ordered the Army Corps of Engineers to go in and restore that water flow back all the way through California. And it's amazing what's happening just in a matter of a week. But see, they can't seem to understand the positives that are happening by these initiatives. They're only trying to go back to the way things were. And as long as they're going to do that, they're going to lose, and lose big from this point on, because America's had it with those policies. Did I lose you, John?
I think we've lost John. He's calling me. Let's see. He may have had a bandwidth problem. Hang on a second. Let's see.
Maybe his phone died.
Hello, John.
Hey, Dwayne. I've lost connection. If you can't tell.
We're talking about you, John.
I would just continue the show until you get John back on. But so I'll do that. Tell me when to be quiet and put him back on.
Did you lose your internet connection?
It says, "Oop, connection lost, reconnecting." But it's been saying that for the last 2 minutes. So I have
exit back out. Refresh your browser. Start with that.
Okay, I will do that right now.
We'll see if we can get him back, Michael.
Okay.
His internet cut him off. It probably the NSA was listening and they cut you off.
Oh, we're just getting started. We got a lot more to say. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's still down.
Check your internet connection. You might have just lost your ISP connection.
I'm thinking exactly what happened. So I'm getting no connection to the internet.
Oh yeah, you've been cut off. I'm sorry.
Well, this is one of the problems that we have.
It's just technology. It's just technology.
So, tell him. So
he can hear you, John.
I can hear you, John.
Well, then I'm going to say I lost you when you were explaining how crazy they were losing their minds. So if you want to continue,
let me try this, John. Your phone is working. Let me send you a link, and you can try connecting with your phone.
Let's do that.
Because if your internet connection's gone, man, I don't think there's anything you can. Probably all of your browser stuff is down. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you a link. Let's go. Where do you want me to send it? What email you got on your phone?
Do the Talk with John.
Hang on. Let's do this.
I might even be able to use the link that I sent to Michael.
Yes, you could.
Probably can.
I'll let you send me the link and we'll go from
there. I'm going to send it to Talk with John Show at Gmail. Okay?
Okay.
Hang on. Let's see. Suppose to. Let's see if we can get this working again. Okay.
Technology.
Oh, technology. And even the big guys have these kinds of problems.
Oh yeah, it is what it is.
Now I don't know exactly where you were, Michael, but you could keep talking.
All right. Well, I will just continue on. So, as we were talking about, the liberal ideology, the liberal policies, this country has grown weary of. And quite frankly, as long as the Democrats refuse to acknowledge that and change their positions, they're not going to stand any better of a chance than they did 2 months ago, because people have just had enough. And you can see it in so many other things. We were talking about some of the problems that we've had with FEMA or with the USAID and other agencies. But let's talk about what's really going on with the border situation. I know we've got about 30 minutes, I believe, left before the show ends. And of course, 2 weeks ago, when you had, is John on?
No, he's got my link. He's going to come back. Keep going, Michael.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right. So about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I guess, before the president was sworn in, we had the highest rate of crossings. We had tens of millions of illegal immigrants. We had drug cartels. We had gangs. We had child sex traffickers. We had terrorists, etc., that were just exploiting the American public, damaging, destroying, murdering, raping, just having their way. And then once the president was sworn in, it all came to a complete turnaround. The president immediately ordered that ICE and others begin to move immediately towards deportation of these illegal immigrants, starting first with the most violent, the criminal violence, and starting also with those who are going after and trying to harm our children. And then, of course, once from there, then he also ordered that the military immediately engage to close our borders. Now, how did he do that? Under what basis and what authority? First thing he did was he name these cartels as terrorist organizations, which automatically, under the law, allows our military to intervene because the military is supposed to protect against adversaries, both foreign and domestic. So he unleashed the military in doing so. We have, over the last 9 days to 10 days, been roughly moving 12 to 1,500 illegal immigrants a day all across the country. Sometimes we're getting as high as 3,000. The goal is to maintain it at 5,000 per day. We have detention centers in various locations across the country where we are utilizing military aircraft, C-130s and C-5 Galaxies, to transport these back to their country of origin. Of course, initially you had countries that immediately said, nope, we're not taking them back. President immediately said, fine, you don't take them back. We're going to pull economic aid and we're going to raise tariffs. And that changed their attitude in about 30 seconds. So now every country that we've approached is taking its illegal immigrants back. And we're in the process of completing what we promised. We're going to make America safe. But one of the things I want to put in a little plug here, real quick, for is we're asking not just our military is doing this, but our thin blue line. And these brave men and women are doing this without the necessary protective equipment. They don't have active shooter vests. That's what our charity is all about. So make sure, if you get a chance, to go to our website. That's INVESTUSA.org. It's charity.org, and help make sure that these brave men and women have the necessary equipment to have a fighting chance to come home to their families. But once we establish that, let me tell you what the response has been. After we got the governments under control to start accepting their illegal immigrants, we were not keeping them here. And then the cartels, just in the last 48 hours, have now issued two edicts. They are planning IEDs on tourist routes inside Mexico, not on our border, but on in their country, to try to kill American tourists if at all possible. So there's been a travel ban, basically, on American citizens going into Mexico at the moment. The second thing is we talked about this on John's show, 6-8 months ago at least, how that the military hardware we left behind in Afghanistan was beginning to show up on the border. One of those aspects was weaponized drones. Well, memo that we intercepted yesterday to all the members of the cartels are they're asking that the weaponized drones be sent from Mexico across the border and be used to attack the border patrol or military targets. So they are now attempting to invade the very sovereignty of America. And it is time we are prepared for covert action. We're going to go in and eliminate them, not just dismantle them. We're going to eliminate this blight of cartels if we have to go all the way to Mexico City. It's time to put an end to it. We're in the process now of picking up gang leaders all across this country and sending them back, but not just across this country. We're following them overseas, and we're picking them up there with special forces as well. We are determined to make the American people safe and secure, and that's one of the things that I'm so proud of this administration for doing. Do we have John back yet?
See me. Can you see me and can you hear me?
Is that you? I heard. I can hear you, John. I can't see you, but that's okay.
Okay. All right. So,
John,
yes.
I can hear and see you. You're good. Your phone is working. Oh, maybe not.
Spoke a little too soon there.
Hey, well, he has a jittery connection, so.
I hear you guys, so I don't know exactly what's going on. But
no, I can hear you now.
All right. So we'll do our best. And what I'm going to do is cut out my camera feed for the moment, and I'm just going to attempt. So that's better for Michael and for the audience. That way we don't use as much. I'm working off my cell phone, so for some reason my computer. I think it's my computer that's down, and forgive me.
I think he went down.
Yeah, he's coming in and out.
Okay. Well, let's pick up where we left off then, and we'll go from there. So, what are some of the other things that we're taking a look at as our future begins to unwind? And go ahead,
I'm
John.
back. Sorry, guys. I'm back.
Okay.
So let's see what we can do, because I can't tell if my family is telling me that the internet's working at the rest of the house or not. So, Michael, this is my question for you. I want to get to what's going on in the Darien Gap, and then move into Canada
Okay.
and Mexico, and what the flow of traffic is like into the United States. And as I listen to that answer, I'm going to reach out.
Okay. Well, we lost you just then, but I know what the question is, so I'll start with the answer. Darien Gap is a very crucial navigational point from Central America, South America, up through Mexico into the United States for illegal immigrants. And quite frankly, it is a location that has been utilized by many of the cartels and others to engage in, people need to understand this. Let me digress for just a moment. People are not coming to America for free. There seems to be a misconception among the American people that these people are looking for a better life, and they just one day decide to walk out their door and lock the door and start walking towards America. You are not allowed to come into America, not because of our laws, which we already have immigration laws. The cartels control the border. So you just can't decide you're going to walk across and come to America. You have to pay the cartels a handsome fee for their protection and guidance by what they call coyotes to take you across the border. And of course, the further your track is from whether you're coming from Venezuela, wherever you're coming from, the more it costs. And so you have all these people paying. The cartel is making billions of dollars off of this. They have the Darien Gap that you have to pass through is the only way to get from South America to Mexico back to the United States. And they have partnered with the Chinese, who are giving them their chemicals for the manufacture of fentanyl. This is where they manufacture a lot of it as well. They give it to people who say, I want to come to the States, but I don't have all the money that you need to be able to pay you. So they make them work it off. You now become slaves of the cartel and you become drug runners. But they've got the Darien Gap there, and they've got Chinese that are being assembled there. Quite frankly, there's a reason why they're being assembled there. The Darien Gap is close to Panama, and the Chinese have over 20,000 troops in that Darien Gap prepared to move in on Panama, on the Panama Canal, so they be so ordered to do so. Now, I don't think we're at that stage. I'm not so sure that China would try to take an offensive against us if we reclaim the Panama Canal, but they're certainly making a threat about it. And so the Darien Gap is where most of this notorious activity formulates, is where a lot of it's staged from. And quite frankly, that's one of our objectives is we have to make sure that we eliminate all those warehouses, all those focal points in the Darien Gap and make sure that it's no longer being able to use to transport contraband to the United States.
Okay, so one of the things that I heard over the last week is that the cartels were starting to take shots at the United States, and that there seems to be a little bit of a border war between two cartels down on the border, and that's in Texas.
That is correct. In fact, we were talking about that while you were trying to figure out how to get back on the air. But here's where you need to understand what is going on: is the cartels have now, because this is costing them money. When you don't allow them to bring their illegal immigrants in, they're losing billions. So they've done a number of things. First thing they have done is they've circulated a memorandum to all their cartel members on the Mexican side to do two things. First of all, to plant IEDs along tourist routes inside Mexico to see if they can kill any Americans that happen to be on the Mexican side. And then, second of all, they are using their drones, weaponized drones. You remember we talked about it on your show, 8 months ago, how that the
Uh,
military hardware from Afghanistan
yeah.
is showing up on the border now. And there you have given specific instructions to their cartel members to use the drones from Mexico, fly them across the border. They're weaponized and target border patrol or military to try to create havoc so they can begin to use that to bring people across the border once again. So that is an act of war. We should consider it as that. It's an act of a threat to national security. And we have preparations in place for covert operations. And we're going to make sure that we take these nefarious people out, eliminate them. They don't need to be disenfranchised, they need to be eliminated. And so, quite frankly, they bit the wrong dog, and they're fixing to find out just how bad they bit that wrong dog. And
Can
if
you
you
hear
can
me
hear me,
now?
John,
I can hear
now
you.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
Forgive me. I'm trying to do a little bit with the producers here at the house. Are trying to get us back online. So I'm communicating with them as I'm listening to you. So one of the questions that I have is how strong an effort do you think that Mexico is supposed to put 10,000 troops on the border? The
Correct.
Mexican president promised that, and then also Trudeau said that he's going to be doing more on the Mexico border. However, China said that they were going to start something at the UN. I believe it was the UN. They were going to try to take legal actions for defamation, basically against President Trump, saying, "Hey, you're bringing fentanyl in." What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's take it work our way backwards. China is going to try to do everything they can to disrupt what we're doing because they're making a killing off us. They're providing the chemicals to the cartels. They're making a killing off of the sell of the chemicals that are made and turned into fentanyl. Plus, they get a bonus. They're killing off hundreds of thousands of American young men. Quite frankly, that weakens our defenses. It weakens our military. It weakens our first responders because there's nobody available to serve. So they're going to do everything they can to derail it. They're going to cry to the UN, etc. Let me give you the response back, and I know the president feels the same way. UN better keep its mouth shut. They better be glad we even let them here stay in New York. I think it's time we kick them out and take all their funding away from them as well. We should be funding them the way we do. We pay more to the UN than anybody else does, and we get the least out of it. We get slapped the worst. It's time just to tell them to pack their bags, hit the road, don't let the door hit them on the way out. But quite
I think
frankly,
I
go
think
ahead.
we need to tell the I think we need to tell the UN. Listen, bottom line is no one gives you more money than the United States. You start either doing it, we either get it our way or it's going to be no way. This is
Exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that's what we need to be doing on that particular issue. Um, when it comes to, uh, I'm trying to remember what your other questions were, John. I think you dealt with China, but I think you had something else in there before then on the border issue. But I remember what it was. The 10,000 troops in Mexico has committed. While that sounds impressive, problem is, and of course, I know the Mexican government like the back of my hand, having lived there for 15 years. And quite frankly, the Mexican government is controlled by the cartels. Its military is controlled by the cartels. So the cartels are not going to be overly upset about 10,000 troops being placed on the border because they feel like they have a good control over them anyway. Trudeau is talking about 1.3 billion. He has not said what that 1.3 billion will be utilized or how it will be utilized, but he said they are committing 1.3 billion in additional funding to help secure the northern border. But the details of that have not yet been released as to how they plan to do that. So quite frankly, I think what we have to do is it's incumbent upon us. We're responsible for our own protection. I mean, I appreciate what the Mexican government is trying to do. Claudia, the Mexican president, is caught between a rock and a hard place. She knows she doesn't call the shots, but she's trying to keep her job. So she's making overtures, but they don't mean anything. Trudeau's in the same position. We need to keep that in mind and make sure we have secured it from within and that we have our soldiers stationed on both the north and the south borders and make sure that we have walls built, we have sealed it, secured it, and make sure that we can no longer be invaded by illegal immigrants coming from either direction.
He keeps fading in and out, Michael.
Yeah, that's what I figure. So I'll just continue until he fades back in. But
all right. Well,
in continuing the conversation that we're talking about, so it's time that we do one simple principle: America first. We need to secure our borders. We need to take care of our people. We need to quit funding foreign governments. We need to quit funding programs that are aimed at destroying and undermining the American people. It's time for a total cleaning of the house. It's almost like another second American Revolution. It's gotten so bad. It's time that we just take the ball by the hands and make sure that we steer this country back in the right direction again.
Can you hear me, Michael?
I can hear you just fine now.
Okay, good. Sorry about that. Just love how modern technology works every once in a while. So the next follow-up question that I have from you is, do you have what are your thoughts on these people shutting down? We've got these Mexican people, of them are from Mexico, flags are out going, hey, look at, they're shutting down what's happening. It's happening in California to stop this.
Well, quite frankly, here's what we need to be doing. First of all, local law enforcement needs to be on the scene. It's their jurisdiction. But if there are mayors and all refusing to allow them to do that, we need to arrest those mayors, quite frankly. But that's a secondary matter. Primary matter is we need to bring in our troops and ICE and Border Patrol, along with a lot of big buses, and just load them up into every one of them. Because I promise you that I don't think there's any of them there that are not illegal. And I don't care whether they're violent criminals or not. They want to disrupt the American society, load them up right then and there, take them to a detention camp, ship them out.
Well stated. Well stated. And I'm going to say one of the things that if I was like, let's say I'm a publicist for those groups, I'd be like, this is not the time to do this, folks. There's going to be TV commercials made up about this, and it's going to even go. It's even going to be worse for us. All these people that are trying to go on the freeway and the highway that are trying to get home, and you're interrupting their flow of traffic, they're going to remember that at election time. Not only have I heard, and if I was the Democrats, and Democrat mayor, I'd call them up and I'd say, you guys better stop this right now. I'm not going to be elected back in. We're going to get a bunch of Republicans in, or we're going to get some very conservative Democrats in. And you think that all the policies that I've been taking care of you, I'm going to have no ability to take care of you. You're going to be on your own.
Well, I think following up on what you just said, here's a funny side note to that. This whole particular issue, John, is the governor of New Jersey came out today,
right,
and challenged, ICE, that he has an illegal immigrant that he's allowing to stay in the garage over his house, and he dared us to do anything about it. Probably wasn't a very smart move, because what he's going to find out is that he's going to find out that even if he is the governor and he has a state escort, the federal law enforcement will take in and will use whatever is necessary, including troops, if we have to arrest him and put him in jail. for breaking the law. So be on the lookout for that. He stuck his neck out and watch it get chopped.
Well, I that's exactly what I hope winds up happening. Is his neck winds up getting chopped. For heaven's sakes, the guy's a moron. But let's go to New York. Your buddy in New York, the mayor.
Eric.
What is happening so that New York, there's a bunch of people reporting in New York, hey folks, guess what? We are attempting to or they're going out in New York, and all these illegal aliens that have been all over the streets are nowhere to be found.
Well, here's what's occurring is they're either self-deporting or they're going in hiding because they know we mean business. Eric knows that we won't tolerate any interference. And quite frankly, he learned his lesson as to how slippery, slimy the Democrats are because he was one of their biggest proponents until it suddenly dawned on him, you know, all my money is going to help pay for these illegals, and y'all are not giving me any more. If you want me to continue to take them, you need to give me some more money. Well, that was not the narrative that the Democratic administration wanted to hear. So they sucked the Department of Justice on him to indict him. And I think he quickly realized just how weaponized, politicized, and how corrupt the Democratic Party is. So he's been very careful now to try to backpedal and to try to make sure that he's doing the right thing. I tell you, he's got his hands full because here's a sad indictment. You remember he was a captain with the NYPD, but as you're beginning to see stories come out, NYPD has its own internal corruption going on, and quite frankly, between that and immigration, they got their hands full.
Okay, so I haven't heard about their internal corruption, so please do tell.
They've got a select command staff, because you got to remember that at one point NYPD had 40,000 officers. It's down to roughly 20 now, maybe even less. That just shows you how bad it's gotten, and there's no way they can do their job with that few. But their senior command staff were doing things like putting overtime, even though they weren't working overtime, changing timesheets for themselves and others, and going from, say, if you're senior management, your senior staff in the NYPD, you may be making 100, 125,000 a year. It suddenly went from that to making 250, 300,000 a year. And you remember they were already having funding troubles to begin with. That didn't help for them to be taking the money and abusing it and basically stealing it because they're putting down that they're doing overtime when they're not, and using all the funds for that. And there's been quite a few of that. There's been quite a few now where the upper management has been promoting its special friends, shall we say, in return for favors. That is coming out as well. And so there's some real cleansing that has to be done in NYPD.
I want to talk about Tom Homan and the work that's been done on the border. So let me read you a headline from the Gateway Pundit. I think this is worth mentioning, but this has been out in the news. A bigger decrease than under the first Trump administration. Tom Homan says border crossings down 93% as of Sunday. Says we've got more work to do. Wow, that's incredible.
93% down. We need to put this in perspective. What does Tom mean? Tom's a good friend. Support him wholeheartedly. We're doing everything we can to make sure he gets the job done. And it's two aspects. How do we stop him from coming in? Well, I've told you we put down 1,500 troops on the first day. Supplement that the next day with an additional 10. Probably got another 1,500 down there. So we've got maybe 13,000, 14,000 troops on the border right now. Just locking it down to make sure. That's why it went down from 100%, went down 93% to only 7% of those are now still trying to come across. And out of the 7%, that's not 7 gotaways. That's 7% that are still stupid enough to try to come across, even though we have all that protection there. So we're basically almost zeroed it out, shut it down so that they can't come in. Other major task is how do we get rid of what's here, especially the criminal element, and that is moving well. It's not moving as fast as we would like it to move, I will share something with you that you're going to laugh at, John. I had this question raised to me from Tom and them on a show just a little while back. How are you able to know where these people are at? Because you remember the Biden administration, two things. First of all, there are 735,000 missing children. You remember?
Definitely. We need to talk about that. Yes.
You remember Joe's people said we don't know where they're at.
Right.
Well, I'm pleased to report we've already recovered over 150, 160,000 of them so far. And this is within 9 days.
Found. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, I texted you and said, like right after, within the first couple of days, it was the statement was is we've located 80,000 or 85,000 missing children, and the key phrase is located, not found and recovered. You're now saying that we've recovered that many children?
Yes, we've recovered that many. And quite frankly, people want to know twofold. First of all, how in the world are you finding them when they said they couldn't be found? Well, quite frankly, I told you all along, our intelligence agencies knew that was a bunch of bunk by the Biden administration. We knew exactly where they're at. I will give you one little funny anecdote that most people don't realize. Is you remember Uncle Joe promised you a phone when you came across?
Yes.
Do you know how easy it is for me to track you once you got that phone?
Very easy to track.
Do you know that I already know where you're at now? You can throw it away, do anything you want to with it, but it's too late. So I've got millions and millions and millions and millions of locations. And it's just also, now of getting the manpower in place to get them all moved.
I noticed how none of the Chinese ever seemed to take those phones.
They did not. They did not, and that. But hey, that's just one. I gave you one little secret as to how we can track. We got plenty of others, and we know where they're at. There are over 100,000 Chinese that are all across the country, strategically placed at various locations where we have major infrastructure facilities, and we're making sure that. Here's the other interesting thing. You remember before I told you China had 13 biolabs in this country that the Biden administration, and they had 13 police stations and other things as well. Well, that's no longer the case. We are going in and we're seizing every bit of that. And I think the next step is going to be what we're pushing for is there needs to be a national mandate that China can't own any property in the United States.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Many countries around the world do not allow anybody but their own citizens. Mexico, for one of them, Mexico, you can't own. You and I can't own. Well, you might be able to because you're in Mexico. You were born in Mexico, but not me. So, United States citizens cannot own property unless they're like dual citizenship.
That's correct.
What are your thoughts about that just being a blanket statement? You have to be a United States citizen to own property in the United States.
I think that's a very wise policy. I think it's very wise. And quite frankly, you say, well, what about we're cutting off economic development? Let me tell you how it works in Mexico. You want to build a factory and you're using American dollars, you can enter into joint ventures, okay? And they're legally enforceable, legally binding, and not necessarily have to own the property and the infrastructure. You own the corporation instead. And there are ways around it. It can be done. So it's not going to affect our economic development, but it does affect the control as who has access and who does not. And that's something we're desperately lacking in this country right now.
So let me pull up we're getting towards the end of the show. I want to pull up my my text from you. And so any thoughts on FEMA? You said that was one thing you wanted to cover. I don't know if we've covered that really or not.
No, I touched on it briefly. Let me touch on it again. Here's what we're going to discover and this will be a topic for another show. But FEMA has been bad boys, and where we have now been notified. There's a recovery of substantial amount of supplies that were to be allocated to victims that were never done, that were actually sold and utilized for other purposes. They've had camps that, quite frankly, have been used for some of these illegal immigrants and were used for sex trafficking camps on the U.S. tab on U.S. dollars, and that is treason.
Wow. Okay, so one thing that Trump was hammered for previous to the inauguration is he said FEMA's using the money for the illegals, and they were like, "That's not true. Fact check, not true." Right? Well,
it is
from
true.
what you're sharing, it's more than true. It's terribly true.
Yeah, it's not just true. That's bad enough, but when you harm children, I have no mercy.
Yeah. What we need to do is have a bunch of Michael Letts have no mercy. It's time to knock some heads, as far as I'm concerned.
The only mercy I'm going to have is I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you meet Jesus a whole lot sooner than you thought.
It's time for you to meet Jesus, sir. It's time for you to meet Jesus. Just so you know.
Yep, we're helping to move them along.
So, folks, real quickly before we get going, I want to re-mention investusa.org. Michael is the founder, president, and CEO of investusa.org. It's a 501c3, and they provide bulletproof. Is it bulletproof? I don't know that bulletproof vest is the
active shooter vest.
Active shooter vest. So not just your standard Kevlar vest, but active shooter vests to first responders. And folks, it's a group worth getting to know. Please go to his website at investusa.org. That's INVESTUSA.org. Michael, any last thoughts before we hit the end of the show? In any nominations that you're not thrilled with?
We just got a notification a few moments ago that Pam has been confirmed.
Awesome.
So Pam is now the new Attorney General. We've still got a few more. We still got Cash. We still got Robert left to go, and Tulsi, but we'll get them through.
Okay. Any last thoughts before we go?
Yeah, let me bring hope to the American people. You're seeing change. Change is not comfortable for anyone, but change is what's necessary because we were headed to a certain path of destruction. So enjoy the ride. It's going to be much better at the end. Trust me. Together, united, we stand. Divided, we fall. Let's be united and make America free and great once again.
And folks, I'm going to say, make sure you remember to turn to the Lord more, so we can have God's grace. I think the Lord, I think Jesus Christ gave us a chance to turn to Him. If we don't honor that chance, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be.
Let me throw in one quick thing. As you mentioned that, John, we're playing a day of national revival sometime in the middle of May. It will be in a national football stadium is what it looks like. Over 100,000 people. But we're calling on America for a revival.
Praise the Lord. I mean, bottom line, praise the Lord. That's awesome. Amen.
More information to come.
I look forward to hearing about that. Michael Letts, thank you so much for joining me tonight. As always, I consider it a blessing, a privilege. I mean, that's the great thing about doing this show is I get to talk to and interact with people like you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. God bless you. God bless America. Have a great evening.
Dwayne, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here. All folks, this has been Talk with John. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next Tuesday.